Welcome back. We've got one more segment and a precious small amount of time with Rick Outzen, my guest. Rick is the publisher and editor of the Pensacola Independent News and is, I can't think of anybody more knowledgeable about local politics and local current events. And we've covered a lot of the really big issues. A big issue for this community is the Community Maritime Park. And what's going on?
Well, I think right where we are right now, 2013, this fiscal year for the city and the CRA and the CMPA, this is the year that they got to start. The CRA has to start paying bills. They've got their first payment. They pledged, the city council under city manager Al Kobe pledged $19.5 million to help relocate the Main Street sewage treatment plant. Those payments start this year. We also have the first, I think it's $2.5, maybe $2.4 million, the first bond payment that needs to be made on the bonds for the park. And the city and the CRA are strapped for cash. You invest in your asset, and it takes a while to catch up to where you get the investments and the capital to come around to where you can actually make the payments. And they're getting hit with both at the same time. That's probably the biggest challenge in front of them. I think that the mayor did make made a solid move in hiring Randy Oliver as a consultant. Randy is a numbers guy. I think even crazy Uncle Wilson Robertson would admit that Randy Oliver knew numbers and knew finances really well. I think the mayor's brought him in. Hopefully he can look at it from an apolitical point of view and not get involved in politics at all.
But now the CRA receives some of the ad valorem tax money for their district. So we know basically what that's going to be, and it's not going to balloon up. The park receives the lease money from the Pensacola Blue Wahoos, and even though they've been a big success, I love the Blue Wahoos. We've got season tickets and go to a lot of games, but
it was never intended to carry the whole note. And it
certainly doesn't. I mean,
but it wasn't intended
the lease payment basically covers the lights. I mean, that may be a little exaggeration, but not much.
Well, in the ticket, they had some fees from the tickets, but you realize that the substantial part of that property of that bond issue was paid to make that land where it was environmentally clean.
And another thing and to give Mr. Studer his due, it costs a lot of money to buy that AA team, and
it puts us on another plane. But going back to the finances, I think the issues that they've got is they've got to figure out how to cover it in the short term, and I think you're right. I think they're going to have to look at what are the expenses for the CRA. The CRA may have to really scale back what it does and just pay those notes. That may be where the revenue has to go, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it just may be where it has to go, how much it can do.
But the CRA is supposed to develop things in the area, right?
Right. Well,
maybe we're stuck with we've got a park.
We've got a park, and we've got the Main Street sewage treatment plant moved. So two pretty big investments that in the long run will make a big difference, I think, downtown.
Moving the sewage plant is huge.
We know. I mean, your offices are downtown just like mine are, and you know that we forget when you went. You didn't eat outside downtown.
No.
You could.
Depending on the wind.
If the wind was coming from that direction,
that sewage plant.
And you hated to bring a visitor with you downtown. Because you had to deal with all those kind of issues. Well, now that's gone. The city has $19.5 million that they're going to give ECOA, and for some reason, the council and Al Kobe didn't take possession of the land for that $19.5 million. But that's already done. That was done.
Who owns the land? The ECOA?
The ECOA still owns it. They're putting it up for sale here in March. And I think the issue is the mayor talked about in his State of the City address back in June that he was looking at the city buying that property. In my column this week in the papers that's coming up is about, I don't know if the city's proven it's not a very good developer. Two, I don't know if the city needs any more vacant land. It's still got to fill that park. It's got a tech
Right.
park. It's got an airport commercial project.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
sure it needs any more vacant land, but what it could do is create an overlay district to where they could kind of it's an extra layer of zoning that would allow, they wouldn't have to buy the property, but they could make sure that we don't get a trailer park there, that it's not an RV park like we have on Pensacola Beach, or it's not that it's it fits.
That's interesting.
A plan. They talked about it last January, a year ago. The council sort of balked at the idea. ECUA, of course, didn't want any restrictions on their property. They don't want anything that's going to hurt them in selling it. So they were upset. The council balked, tabled it. It never got off the table. So now we are, if the city doesn't make a decision soon about that, they're going to be stuck with whoever ECUA sells it with,
Right.
and with just very loose code restrictions on it. So I'm concerned about that, and I think that's the other piece. But the ECUA, the CMPA has got its hands full. This is when you pay the piper, and I think what people have to realize is this again is one of these issues where we've got to figure out how to do it. We're going to have to bite the bullet. And maybe Randy can come up with some ways that they can rework some of the financing. Maybe there's some movement with ECUA. Maybe they can give a little bit on it. Maybe that'll be a trade-off and not doing the overlay district. There may be some negotiation that can be done, but this is where we're at, and I think that's the hard part is going to be this year, figuring it out. The stadium's successful, the community loves it, the community feels good about itself having it, which is typically probably the biggest benefit you get out of having a stadium like this and a minor league team. But I think that the payments are due, and I think hopefully Oliver can come up with some ways to rework the payment schedule maybe, or restructure the CRA to where they have funds to work with.
Well, we've got some very positive movement on the pensions. I understand the fire piece isn't finished yet, but there's reason for optimism.
Right.
Mr. Oliver's working hard on the terrible problem of finances down there at the park. You think overall the city's moving in the right direction?
I believe it is. I believe it is. I think it's. But the problem is going to be the details. The details on dealing with the crime and really creating real jobs. We've had a lot of press announcements about employers coming, but they've never, the hardest part building your administration on economic development is there's a big difference in announcing it and actually landing it. And we're having a huge gap in that.
Well, we've got this, and all I see is the vacant property now. There may be more going on there. We've got this tech park south of the Civic Center, which is it's vacant.
Well,
is there anything going on?
And that's a classic example of where, and the old form of government really, truly screwed up that deal. I mean, it made sense because when they first started developing the project, the goal was they were going to get App River to move there, and they were going to get Avalex to move there, and they would become sort of the drawing card for other high-tech companies to come.
Which would be a drawing card for the whole Aragon
for the whole area,
project and everything else.
That would pull, and that was what the goal was. Well, what happened was Avalex designed its building, which is the one that they have now in South Santa Rosa County, and the city development chief at the time, Thaddeus Cohen, said he didn't like it.
Oh. That's what.
And Avalex closed their book.
They kicked Avalex out.
They just closed the book.
And
there was nothing that, the city manager allowed it to happen. I'm not sure he completely knew it was happening when it did. City council couldn't do anything about it. There's no one held accountable for that decision.
Terrible.
And Avalex moves over to Santa Rosa County. App River says, well, we just like the building we're in. We'll just stay here. And an opportunity was lost. And once that went away, they've really struggled with that concept, and I'm afraid it's going to have to be scratched for some. And I'm hearing through the grapevine that the city and the mayor and the chamber are now starting to bounce around other ideas. Is there some other, can we reconfigure this or use it a different way? But that's an instance where you had a bureaucrat stop a project.
And that's been the knock on Pensacola for
It really has been.
for so
Right.
long. You know,
And that's one reason
we'd
why
like to do business in here, but you are making it too hard, so we're going someplace else.
Well, and that was one of the, I think one of the impetus behind the strong mayor. I mean, it's part of what we were seeing was we needed to have, if that happened today, we would hold Ashton Hayward accountable for it.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Avalex, if you remember, was in Pensacola.
They were here.
They
right.
had their office here.
And they had the building design, which they built.
Why not treat them like somebody you're courting? You know, what do you want? Anything reasonable. We're here to help you, facilitate it, and make you happy.
Right, a certain amount of arrogance.
Oh, dreadful.
Right. I don't miss the old days of city government. I don't think that it. I think that it hurt us. It probably had its time and place, but coming into this new age, where you're no longer the belle of the ball and you're competing with everyone else, you've got to be leaner, more aggressive. A culture change had to happen, and I think Hayward's brought that to the table. To his credit, it's still in this. It's still working its way through. But, there were a lot of decisions that we're living with today that were made 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And they were all based on a rising economy and this unending growth. And
also, wasn't there a good old boy culture? Everybody was kind of buddies with everybody, and the same people got all the deals, or is that overblown?
No, well, I think it's always, everybody's good old boy is a group that they're not in.
Yeah.
But, I think there is some merit to it that deals, that RFPs were written certain ways for certain people to get them, and the competition wasn't always as open as it could have been.
It's a good way to sum it up. I don't know how much time we have left. One thing I'd like to do, and I noticed there's an ad in your paper this week. And I know you weren't able to make it. The Pensacola Symphony Orchestra performed on New Year's Eve. I was there, and it was spectacular. And everybody in the audience felt the same way.
Right.
That it was just extraordinary. They perform again. I don't know if there are any tickets left, but they perform again on the evening of the 12th, which is what they call Beethoven in blue jeans.
Right.
They encourage people to dress down. Right. And in fact, the orchestra, some of them look kind of funny in these clothes, wears blue jeans and T-shirts. They all wear the same T-shirts. But the Pensacola Symphony Orchestra, and a lot of the tickets are kind of pricey. I mean, they cannot make it on ticket sales, but they have to price the tickets so they can make some dent, because they'll put 50, 60, 70 more people on stage, talented professional people. It's a big deal, and it's very good.
Well, and you bring up a great point. I mean, one of the true quality of life assets this community has is its cultural offerings. And I think that the symphony, without a doubt, Peter does an unbelievable job. I think we have the opera coming up.
Yeah.
And they do 2 performances a year, and they're coming up, and they're wonderful. The Pensacola Museum of Art has a new a new display coming in, exhibit coming on that they're bringing to the forefront too. It's truly, this is the time of year that it gets exciting, because the symphony really kicks in, and then you see
you got 2 opera performances
opera
coming
really does it, and they're unbelievable.
Then once it gets hot,
no,
everybody forgets.
Everybody goes to the beach.
Go to the
That's
ballpark.
right. Everybody goes to the beach or the ballpark.
Yeah.
So, but I think those are great things going on, and then we're in the Mardi Gras season, and that'll be fun.
Well, of course, we're still in football season, and one of the problems I think with some people I know going to the symphony, because I've offered them tickets, as well, LSU's playing, and
or Alabama or whatever.
Or Alabama,
that's all part of it
television.
too.
Yeah.
But I think what people will find, and I found this with the opera performances, is that they really work hard to make them accessible, to be able to for people to enjoy it.
They put all these the operas, by and large, are in languages that people like me don't understand, Italian and some in German. I think Sweeney Todd might have been in English. I didn't go to that one, but they'll put a translation on a screen up above the stage, which really adds to it. Some of it, they're such melodramas anyway. I mean, they did Madame Butterfly, and that's a pretty simple story. You can kind of follow it without knowing a word of Italian. But the Madame Butterfly, which they did last year, was stunningly good. I've seen that opera performed before, and this was just
It's amazing.
Remarkable.
It really, truly
yeah,
is.
I agree with you. Peter Rubart, the musical director and the conductor of the Pensacola Symphony, and he'll explain a little bit about the pieces, just a little bit, not a lecture on musicology, about how they relate, and which is really very helpful.
Why he selected
He's
this.
very good at it.
Oh, he
He's
is.
very
He
good
really
at that.
is.
Very good
He
at
really is.
explaining what's going on. While we're talking about it, this weekend they do something. Ordinarily, they'll do kind of an open deal for $5. You can go in at 2 o'clock on the afternoon of their performance, and you can watch a rehearsal or something for $5. But this weekend coming up, the 12th, they're going to start a little early. They start at 12:30, and they call it the Family Day or Family Program.
Right.
And kids as young as 5 can join in. They introduce them to the instruments and maybe even let them play some of the instruments. They have interactive things for the kid. I mean, if you've got a young kid, say 5 to 12 or something, it'd be fun and interesting for them. And if you get people engaged early in this kind of music, it is just so rewarding. And I think it's a shame that people won't take the step to get over there. That that's a hyper. I don't like it. My wife is one of those people. And that's unfortunate.
Right, but it works. But it works, and we're in a great period for all of that. And I think that I would agree with you completely. It's worth. They need your patronage. They need you to go because they depend on the ticket sales as well as sponsors. But I think it's. That's one reason why our paper's always worked all sorts of deals with all these cultural groups because we want
to promote them.
Because it's critical to the quality of life.
Now you've got all these young people downtown. The cheap seats are $20. Just try it out. Rick Outzen, the editor and publisher of the Pensacola Independent News. It's been a real pleasure having you tonight, and we'll be back next week with Within Reason with Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin. Good night.